sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
This is Rabbi Erez Sherman and Rabbi on the Sidelines, a podcast where we speak about the intersection of sports and faith. This morning, we are joined by Coach Jim Boeheim, 45 years at Syracuse University, NCAA champion 2003, member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, 33 NCAA tournaments, 5 Final Fours, advocate for Coaches versus Cancer, the special needs community, and most importantly, just a wonderful mentor and leader to so many. Coach, it's so wonderful to have you. Thanks for joining us in snowy Syracuse, I hear.
Yeah, we just had our normal April snow shower. It's clearing up. I think it'll be all gone tomorrow. But yeah, we're used to that. You know, you live in Syracuse as you have. You know it can snow in April, sometimes even May, but then it's usually good after May.
I know my kid is 9 years old, and when it drizzles, they put on a winter coat. And I said, we got to go back to Euclid and show them what it's about. So first of all, I want to thank you for not just being here, but the presence on the court and off the court as well. You actually got me, you don't know this, but through rabbinical school, because my summer job was working at the Coach Boeheim camp at the Dome for 5 summers. So lots of prayers were going on at those wonderful courts as well. But we're going to start based on what you've done. You've done everything in the basketball world. National champion, Final Fours, U.S. Olympic, every accomplishment you have done. But what I am so grateful for on a personal level in my family is what you have done off the court for the special needs community as well. As of course, you know, my brother Eyal, of blessed memory, was an amazing, not just fan, but literally you welcomed him into the family of Syracuse basketball. What motivates you off the court to do those things that, to be honest, ESPN and all those networks, they just don't see?
Well, the great thing that you get, especially in a smaller town like Syracuse, you're the only game in town, and you are blessed as we are in Syracuse with 30,000 fans coming to our games. The support that we get from the community is unbelievable. I mean, we get a couple thousand students, but we get 28,000 Syracuse fans who live, you know, pretty much in the Syracuse area, a little bit Rochester, maybe a few in Albany. But when you get that kind of support, you have to give back to the community. I think that whether you're a basketball program or a business in a community, you get so much from the community. If you're a business, the workers you have that make your business successful, people that buy your products. And I think we're all really obligated to give back to our community. And we've been able to do it through a lot of different ways. And we started with Coaches versus Cancer, which we still support. But now through our foundation for 10 years, we've given $6 million back out just in this community. The good thing about having your own foundation is that it stays, we can dictate where it goes, the money goes, and all of our money stays here in Syracuse. Some very little small part for cancer research, but most of it for groups that work with kids. So last year we gave, I think, in the neighborhood of $600,000 out to 50 different organizations. Wow. So we give some organizations $5,000 or $3,000, and it gets it's a small organization that's a lot of money for them. In other cases, we maybe give up to $50,000 or $100,000 to an organization. But generally, they're smaller grants, and we can touch more kids with after-school programs, with summer camp programs that, you know, particularly now, there's not much funding for. So to be able to do that in your own community, and the payback for me is because they support us in our basketball program. So it's really an obligation to raise that money. We're having our gala this Saturday, which is virtual. We'll have people from all over the country. We'll have 90 auction items. We'll have Syracuse fans from all over the country bidding on stuff. So all that money goes right back in here. We have one part-time staffer, and that's all. The only expense that we have. We don't have office expense. We take a little corner of a closet here in the Mello Center, and we use that for just once a week. And so we have no expenses. So people know they give us their money. It's going directly to kids in our community. So, but to answer your question, I mean, this is why we get so much support. And so we've been able to put back. I mean, we do a luncheon for ladies, which is kind of fun for Make-A-Wish, and we raise $100,000 at that luncheon every year. And it's kind of a fun event. The players go. We have 600 ladies there, and no better organization than the Make-A-Wish organization.
Absolutely. Actually, and we've been a recipient of that as well. And so you spoke about the dollars that go to the organizations. What about the relational piece as well? I'm going to show a picture real quick that you might remember or might not. Give me one moment here. Actually, I don't see that come up. I'm sorry. But about the kids, I know there are a couple of kids that your team has adopted in 1996. Actually, I was honored with Eyal to come to the Final Four practice, and he drew a picture with his mouth. And I vividly remember you stopped practice, brought all of the players over, John Wallace, Otis Hill, Donovan was on that team. And I remember you told the guys, we're going to the Meadowlands tomorrow, but this is what it's about. What are those lessons that you teach those, if you wish, teenagers and college kids on the court, that they're doing so much more than Buddy hitting all those threes, which of course we love just as well?
Yeah, the great thing is we take the kids, our players, to the hospital. We take them to the cancer ward. Obviously kids in tough positions. The Make-A-Wish luncheon we bring our kids to, and there's many Make-A-Wish kids there. And we bring to practice kids all the time. We've adopted a kid who is a special needs kid, and he comes to practice most days. And we've had 2 of those kids over the last few years. And that's a great reward. And it's something that our players really learn something from, I think. That's one of the reasons we do it. We help those kids, but I think our players get to understand something. We went to a school just last week down in the inner city, and just to see the kids there, how happy they were to see the players. I mean, those are all good experiences for our players. They need to learn to be involved in their community. We all need to learn. It's part of going to college. There's a lot of college kids now that are really involved in the community, that do work in the inner city with kids. So the more we do that, I mean, it's and you really get more from it than you ever put into it. I mean,
absolutely.
It's amazing. We do a dinner for Boys and Girls Club, and they bring the top kids from the Boys and Girls Club in the Syracuse area. They sit with our players, they ask questions, they get autographs. I mean, those are big moments. And it's all part of being involved in your own community. To me, most coaches do this. There's not a lot of recognition, but most coaches are really involved in their communities. And, we have a platform. So,
Right.
We raise more money than any organization in town because our fans are, especially when we win, when we have a good year, they give a little bit more money.
We are with you no matter what. All the years that you said fill the seats, I promise you. Believe me, my brother was there for every game. I'm pushing through the snow. And I know also Julie would say this as well, and especially in the Coach versus Cancer, or the basketball last year, she mentioned that wheelchair section is near and dear to her heart as well. And being part of that section, just like it's like a family like no other.
Well, Julie's came here and got her master's in the education school working with kids with special needs. That's what she did and does. And she runs the foundation. She's the prime mover, prime worker, prime fundraiser in our family. And she's done an amazing job, getting our foundation to where it is today. And, which I never thought would get to this point where we could raise up to $1 million a year. So it's been really through her work that this has all happened.
So here's a short clip of the basketball from last year. We hope that you will join in this year. And this is exactly the work that Coach Boeheim is speaking
To do
about.
anything for 44 years takes tenacity and passion. To be a coach for 44 years, well, something's got to be wrong with you, really.
The first time I met Coach, he was 30 years old, and he was assistant coach recruiting me. The next time I saw him, he was the head coach, and I'd signed to come to Syracuse. It took a very short period of time to understand that he knew basketball really well. That plaid coat followed us around. It was our good luck charm.
I don't know what Jim did with that plaid jacket. It was a good look, though, huh? He's come a long way.
We'd have a morning practice really early, and then Coach would say, listen, I want you all to get together, and then we'd go over to Upstate Medical Center to the Terminal Children's Ward. Coach would have us all together. It was just like a big family. It was a great way for us to bond also as a team. We played checkers, we played Monopoly, we played these games, and it was so funny because we never won. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting taken to the cleaners by these kids. I'll never forget the first time one of the nurses just came over and was giving us all a big hug because she said, these kids haven't had this much fun since they've been up here.
So can you go through that, what you do? I know that's not just when Rosie was there, but really it's every single year. You take the guys to Upstate, and like I said, there have been calls to your office when we were in Upstate, and within minutes, there was a player by our side, and that mattered. Take us through those visits.
Yeah, I mean, they're heart-wrenching. When we first started to go, it was, a long time ago, 45 years ago. And in fact, I think we went when I was an assistant coach. So, and you see these kids, and they're in bed, they're hooked up to IVs. Some are able to get around, some can't leave their bed, and it's heartbreaking. And it's just, but it brings something to their day. I mean, I've met kids even in the last couple of years who were on those wards who survived and who are still alive. That's 45 years ago. But it's a big day in their lives that we're there. And because going through cancer treatment, there's nothing worse than that you can see watching a kid go through that. And the spirit they have, the toughness they have, it is inspiring to you and inspiring to our players. These kids, they're not complaining about being tired. They don't complain about, well, we're having too many practices. I've got too much work to do. They're smiling, they're happy, and they're, getting cancer treatments every day. So it's a good lesson for our players. It's inspiring for me.
Absolutely.
Go there and see these kids.
So actually, each coach and each person that I speak to, last week, Coach Doherty was on the show. Next week, Coach Martelli, obviously a good friend of yours with the Coaches versus Cancer as well. Faith in sports. That's the premise that I asked, right? Not many coaches have been on a podcast with a rabbi. Big East, full of Catholic schools. Coach Doherty told some funny stories about 4-letter words that he used on the bench, and in front of the priest, it got a little dicey. But is there an aspect of faith on the court, in the dome, in the locker room, between players and coaches?
Well, it's interesting. We started out with a Catholic priest was our team chaplain for the first 20 years I coached. Father Charles, who's famous in our local community, was a very talented man, put on plays, and Broadway type plays, quality. And was with us 20 years, and now we have a FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, guy with us, and he comes to practice every day, and he travels with us, and he sits with the players, he counsels the players. It's good for the players to have another voice, another ear to go to. Coaches are good. We do our job. We're constantly talking to our players, but it's good to have somebody outside the coaching fraternity to talk to. So I think that's a very important part. Young kids today get thrown a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff going their ways with social media, with all the different things that are there. And I think it's really good for them to have another voice, somebody else that they can talk to And that's important. That's a very important part of their development as a player, that they have that opportunity to, and we have players of all different, levels of what their faith is.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to give them that opportunity to see what's there and to develop it as they move forward, just as it's important to develop their basketball side, their social side, their academic side. That's all part of, we get a kid who's 17 years old and we're going to have him hopefully for 4 years, not as much today, but you want to have a good influence on your players in terms of off the court as much as their development on the court. And so all of that is all part of being a college coach. And really always has been, but it's, I think, even more important in today's world because the players are pulled in so many different directions.
Actually, and the Jewish players, some of that you had over the years, ended up at our synagogue and our community as well. So it's been a wonderful partnership as well. There was one time that you actually said the rabbi makes more suggestions at your practices than he does at the synagogue. So there has been a rabbi on the sidelines before.
You get a lot of help, and it's fortunate that I don't hear most of that help.
Are you familiar with Yeshiva University and their basketball program right now? They're actually,
I'm not that familiar with what they're doing.
Yeah, so actually Mike Sweetney, Georgetown Hoya, is one of the assistant coaches there right now.
He was great in our league.
Yeah, and they actually have the longest win streak in NCAA because there's no tournament for D3, 36 wins right now. And their balance of faith is really, really fascinating. And just as you spoke about the priests being involved, and here's Mike going actually to a very religious institution, and they're doing some amazing things as well. One guy actually possibly going to be drafted in the draft as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So you wrote this book a couple years ago, Bleeding Orange. If you haven't read it, definitely grab a copy. The insides of Coach Boeheim and really what makes you go. And you really speak really highly of your parents and your father. And you spoke about fear and that back in the day there was a fear, but that fear hasn't gone away. And you've been on every biggest stage, and you say every moment you still have that fear.
Absolutely.
What does that mean, and what does that feel like when we're watching on TV?
Well, before every game, you're worried about what's going to happen. You're going to do the right things. Your team's prepared. You're always worried about that stuff. And when you stop worrying about it and you don't care that much, you should not probably be in it anymore. But it's always there. I think there's actually less fear when you're playing because you know what you can do and you feel confident. It's just you. But when you're a coach, you're relying on all these other guys and the players and the referees and all the other things that go into being a coach. So it's just there's a constant fear that, to get this thing right, get through this and make sure we do the right things and make sure you do your job and make sure that the players are prepared to do what they want to do and be successful. Because as a coach, you want your players to be successful. There's no happiness when you lose. I mean, you can want to play, you can enjoy playing all you want, but if you don't win, there's no really happiness for players. That's just the way it is, and it's not a bad thing. You want to compete, you want to play at a high level, and you want to be successful. So when you're coaching your sons, like I did this year, next year.
Yeah, two of them. Family reunion. We're excited about that.
Well, you want your sons to be successful. You want them to play well. You want them to win and be happy. And as a coach, you want your players and your team to be happy, and your fans. You want them to be happy. And you really buy into that. That's what coaching's about. It's just there's in coaching and in sport, there's no gray area. It's pretty much black and white. You win or you lose. And a lot of other things you do. Well, we did pretty good this year. We did this, or we did. No, you either win or you lose in sports. So it doesn't matter if you came close. It doesn't matter if, in a lot of businesses you can do really, really well. You didn't even win. You maybe not be the best, but you did really well and you had a good, successful year. But at the end of the day, in coaching, you win the game, you lose. As simple as that. And in most things in life, you can be very successful, and you don't necessarily have to get to that point where it's all or nothing. But in sports, it's pretty much all or nothing, and it's just part of the deal.
So a lesson that your mom taught you when you were a walk-on at Syracuse with Dave Bing, your roommate, Hall of Famer, just amazing, amazing man, was she told you, and I quote, "You don't have to be as good as him. You just have to be as good as all the others." Yeah. What does that look like in today's world with obviously the transfer portal and everybody wanted to be better than the other? What does that look like in terms of would you be able to teach that lesson to your own kids today?
It's difficult today because it's a short-term thing. If you're not being successful right now, you leave. You go someplace else. And the problem, and what we're going to find out, and we knew in the past, was just always a number of transfers. There was a couple hundred. And 100 didn't do well. They didn't find a better place. Maybe they weren't in a good place, but maybe it would have worked out, whereas it didn't work out for 100, 120, and maybe it worked out for some. But now we have 1,400 players transferring.
That's crazy.
And it's not going to work out for half of them probably. And would they have been better where they were? Well, that's a hard question. I think when a guy's not playing at all, like we had 2 guys transfer last year, they weren't playing. So they theoretically would go someplace better. It didn't work for them. They didn't play more. But we're going to have 2 or 3 guys leave that were playing and would play a lot here next year. Will they play where they go? There's no answer to that. We'll see. But it's just, sometimes it's better to work through things. But if, of the 1,400 players out there, there's 700 or 800 of them, it's not going to work out. Mm-hmm. Now, you can say, well, they did what they felt they wanted to do. And so you can say that's a good thing. But we'll see how it all works out at the end. It's a difficult time because you can't develop the continuity with your team that you'd like to. 2 or 3 guys developing to where they would really play big roles, and now they're gone. So we have to bring somebody else in who's new to the program, and we'll have to fit them into what we're doing. And, coaches will make this adjustment. I think coaches will be fine. Duke, Kentucky, top schools, they're going to lose play. They're going to get players. We're going to get players. We'll make it work. Will it work for all of the players that left? It won't, but we'll find out down the road. But it's a different time in college basketball. And when the NIL comes in, players will be able to make money. That's a good thing in a lot of ways for players to be able to capitalize on their internet, on their different things that they can do, their images. But, do we really want these guys to be professionals? They're 18 years old, 19.
Hard.
I always say, well, coaches make a lot of money, so players should make a lot. Well, players are 18 years old. I didn't make any money until I was 35 years old, and coaching, I really didn't make any then until I was really 45 or 50. I mean, it's ludicrous to say players should be getting money. They're kids. They're going to make money, and that's good. I mean, before they had a full $70,000 scholarship and some meal money, so really kids were getting $1,000 a month and meals and free education, which isn't bad. It's really not bad. But now
I just paid off my loans 2 years ago, so it's good. I mean, it's good.
College athletes don't have to pay off any loans. They got money all the way through, and so I mean, the college athletes. And you remember this: there's 3,500 college basketball players. 3,400 of them aren't going to play professionally. Exactly. So 3,400 college athletes, basketball players, got a free education and have no bills, nothing to pay back, and they were never going to be pros. And they had a great experience of playing in college. We charter, we fly everywhere. It's tutors, everything you need, weight training, everything. A scholarship's really worth about $150,000 when you count all the extra things that are thrown in there. So I think kids have it good, but they're going to make more money. They're going to be able to capitalize, and I think it's great. It's fine. My buddy's share of something in the social media thing was at like 47 when he was in this run. He made the tournament, if he'd have been getting money this year from the internet, he would have made a lot of money from that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it all works, but I know it works. That you get more views on your Instagram or whatever it is, you can monetize that. And so, I mean, that'll be good. It'll just be so different as we move forward. And it's still important for players to realize they've got a great opportunity. They're going to get a great education. And for the most part, kids do. There's a myth that the good college players don't go to school, and that's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
We graduate almost all of our players that stay 4 years. We have guys that have left early and are coming back to take courses. So they do get education. Even if you only got 2 years of a college education, that's better than none. And,
That's true. That's
and
true.
most of them will try to finish. So it's a different time, but it's a fun time in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of things to navigate. And I like doing it because it's challenging. It always has been challenging, but it's still fun to get a team together, get them to play together. We struggled during the year. We were young. We weren't quite able to get it to where we wanted to the end of the year. And then we played great at the end of the year and got in the tournament, played great. So it was a great experience. But every year is different. We're starting over next year. We have a lot of new players. And I think we'll be pretty good. I think we'll be a good team. We got a lot more size. And we have more veteran players than we've had in a long time. We'll have 3 or 4 seniors, a couple juniors, which is the most kind of veteran team we've had in a long time.
So you said just what you said before, that things change, but you have that energy every year. We have a tradition that says the old shall be renewed and the new shall be made holy. And I think you do an amazing job. You step on that court every November, and it's like you're doing it for the first time. And that renewed energy is amazing for all of us to see. And like you said, you bring just strength to so many people. One last person that influenced your life is your dad. And within our tradition, the highest thing that can be done is actually accompany a loved one to the resting place of eternity. And your dad was a mortician. And I know, you joke about it in the book that it's in your home and everything like that. And as a child, you're around that. But what type of impact did that have, just going back to the first question that I asked, in terms of the giving back and obligation and watching your dad be in that business, if you wish?
Well, it's a tough business. It really is. And, it was in our home, so you saw it every day. And it hardens you a little bit to the idea of death and to, all of that. It does when you live it every day. And I took bodies out, picked up bodies when I was 14 years old. So, it's just something you're used to. My father was interesting. He was a tough guy. Him and I clashed a lot. My mother had to smooth it over as much as possible, but he was very competitive. He made me competitive. We batted. Everything we did was competitive. Card game, a poker, a ping pong game, a pool game. Everything was competitive. He pushed me. He didn't want to lose. I didn't want to lose. And he made me the competitor that I am. There's no question about it. He just had that competitive gene. My mother was a better athlete, probably better at a lot of games than either of us were, but she didn't even care. You won. So even when you don't care about the outcome. She won the club championship in golf one year, and she felt bad for the lady. I said, "Well, you won." She literally didn't care. She really did, and that's unusual. She would win. She'd try to win. She would, she won a lot. And but at the end, she really didn't care, and that's highly. You don't see that too much in somebody that is good and plays to win, and yet really doesn't care. And my father, we just cared about winning, so we're different.
Hopefully this morning, lots of Bruins fans were converted to Orange fans as I bring the Orange pride here. There's 2 things that I miss, Coach, about Syracuse. It is the Carrier Dome and your team, and a slice of varsity pizza. So when you are back out in LA with a buddy or training, we hope you visit us here at Sinai Temple, and we will look forward to seeing you then. Thank you to Coach Jim Boeheim, Syracuse University, Hall of Fame, 2003 national champion, 45 years, 5 Final Fours, 33 NCAA tournaments. But in our tradition, Coach, we say a mensch. just a good person. Coach, thanks so much for having us. I'm honored to join with us this morning, college basketball analyst, Fox Sports, NCAA March Madness 365, Big Ten Network, really all around the college basketball world, Andy Katz. Andy, thanks for being here this morning.
Well, thanks for having me, Rabbi.
Yeah, first question is, have you ever been on a rabbinic podcast before?
Actually, I have.
Oh.
I'm drawing a blank here. This is bad. In Minnesota.
Nice. Rabbi Jeremy Fine.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
No, he's actually my colleague and good friend, the great Rabino. Exactly. I
was with Rabbi Fine at the Final Four 2 years ago.
Nice. Well, you're on competing network here this morning, so I'll let him know. So we're going to just jump right into your story because I'm less interested right now about St. John's beating Villanova, even though that was basically a Hanukkah miracle last night, and more interested in your story behind the scenes. Take us back to high school. You get cut from the basketball team, but the passion of the game turned into the passion of the word. What exactly happened back there a couple decades ago?
Wow, you're going way back. So that was senior year, Newton South High School. Was on the team, and someone had moved into our district in December. And so at the time, the max, I think, was 12. I could be blurring these facts here, but it was around 12. And you couldn't, as a senior, go down to JV. And so, but I was willing to do whatever. I just want to keep playing. And yet I was the last man out. So I was cut. And after an initial shock, because obviously my friends were on the team and worked hard for it, made the decision that I wasn't going to just sort of be a wallflower. And so I went to Newton Cable. I grew up in Newton, Mass. And at the time, they weren't broadcasting the local games. And so I made a pitch to them, and they said basically, hey, if you can do this and recruit your friends to be cameramen, we'll put it on the air. And that's what we did. And I did Newton South and Newton North that season, and broadcast the Newton South and Newton North games. I had literally friends who were the cameramen, and we put it on the air on local access cable. And that was the beginning of what is now a 30-year career.
And when you talk about broadcasting, I think actually one little similarity between the rabbinic world and the broadcasting world is the ability to tell a story. And you were quoted, I believe it was during a talk with Wisconsin journalism students. You said, "I don't think it's a straight path. I think you need to be well-versed in history and politics and critical writing to be a journalist." How did those passions come about, and what do you use today? I mean, it's not just about points on the board. You're amazing, and I followed you over these many years here of actually telling that story, right? What skills do you use there? What points do you look into when you're looking at a player, at a coach, at a team to get a bigger point across than just a basketball game?
So it's funny you bring that up, Rabbi, because a pet peeve of mine is I also would say there's performance involved in this. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a fan of when people are selected from the congregation, go up to the bima, and they cannot basically carry themselves, and they can't perform, and they have no presence. And yes, you want participation, but when they mumble and you can't hear them, or they stand and they lean over the bima and they have no presence. And so what you've done is you've completely lost the audience. Now, hopefully we're going to get that back post-pandemic, but that was a big pet peeve of mine. Anytime you went to a service, was that whoever was up there speaking better know how to speak. And and that's the same thing with a sermon, to tell a story and to deliver it. And so, yes, I think that being able to write, to deliver, to have presence, to perform are all critical skills. To how to ask a question, always open-ended, never closed, no yes, no's. It's how, why, what, when, where, not did you, and those are all parts of journalism and in real life, and you can apply it to being a rabbi, a priest, you name it. because you've got to keep people's attention. And so you got to be able to tell a story and to basically not bury the lead. You've got to grab them right at the beginning. And all that is part of your own research, your own, self-editing, which is a big thing that I think also, a little pet peeve that I think rabbis and others should do. And sort of, look, everyone's got short attention spans now. It's worse than ever. And so you really got to deliver the point as soon as possible within however you're delivering it. And so, yes, I had other interests. My professional interests were in journalism, but I was a history poli-sci major. And I'm a big believer that if you are going to cover the courts, you better know the law. If you're going to cover this pandemic, it should be medical. That's another crazy that drives me crazy is when we've got, White House reporters asking questions at White House press conferences who don't understand science. It should be medical reporters who are in that briefing room who are asking the questions, because they should be trained for that. And so that's why, to me, it's always been important to be more well-rounded in this profession.
It seems like you've been to too many Zoom B'nai Mitzvah. People think we just go on the air at 9 o'clock and say Shema Yisrael, but the work starts at 7. And the same thing, sports games, you get in, the work doesn't start there. I actually was listening to, I forgot who it was on the air, but they were saying the hardest part about the pandemic when you're not standing on the court, it's not the game, it's the 2 hours before the game that you're gathering those stories, that you're hearing what they had for breakfast, that talking about their COVID testing as well. And you did mention about the art of asking a question. And you probably already know this, but right, the Talmud actually is about asking questions. And in fact, there's something called teku, where two rabbis are arguing about something and the answer is teku, meaning there's no answer. And I love that in terms of the journalistic aspect and well as the sports. Has that ever gotten you, the audience often wants a yes, no answer, but can you tell us a story perhaps where you have asked a question that has led to really making a deeper impact beyond the sports court, whether it's an inspiring moment of hope or faith, or after a story has come out, something in society has changed in the sports world or out?
Wow. I don't know if I can come up with one example. Look, one of the things, and I saw you tease this, one of the things maybe I've become most famous for was, doing the bracket with President Obama. And how that started was I asked the question. You don't get anything unless you ask. Nothing is handed to you. And so that was a great example where we were in a room together because I was doing a story on basketball and his family back in 2008, about 10 days before the election. And, and I've told the story many times of that Colin Powell had endorsed John McCain that morning. And so they were changing a speech. We were down in North Carolina. He was on his way to Fort Bragg, and he wanted to, we were told basically we got to stay in the room. And basically then Senator Obama and I had about 40 minutes together because they were rewriting the speech. And I just had this epiphany and popped up and said, Senator, if you win, I would like to do the bracket with you. So what are the chances that if you win, that we can come to the White House and fill out the bracket? And he thought it was, and he says, you're on, let's do it. And it's something that you're not going to get there if you don't ask. There's no question.
That's why you're here this morning. I asked.
Yes.
So talking about asking, you do the Obama bracket. Obviously, that was amazing in terms of combining sports and politics. I actually want to go to race in sports and faith. This week we lost a giant in John Chaney. Obviously, a couple of months ago, John Thompson. I'm a Syracuse guy, so but I've gotten to know actually Mike Sweetney from Georgetown, and gotten to love the Hoyas over this last couple of years as well. Those guys have made a difference off the court because of what they did on the court. I want to read you a quote from Dan Leibovitz, SEC Associate Commissioner, who used to coach with Chaney. He said, "I'm not going to stick a lollipop in your mouth. I'm going to treat you like a man." That's what Chaney used to tell his players. what do you see the impact of John Chaney in the world of race relations, especially what's happening in the world today in terms of the George Floyd incident in June and going forward?
Well, first of all, John Chaney, I'll never forget. I was interviewing him once years ago, and I walk in and he asked me if I had, if I knew a good place to get, one of them Jewish sandwiches, because he loved corned beef, pickles, and the whole bit. Grew up, his formative years in Philadelphia. Stayed there obviously most of his life, and I think his first coach was Jewish. He was really interwoven into that community, whether it was the Black community, the Jewish community in Philadelphia. Had a great appreciation for both communities, and was an incredible mentor and leader and educator, and really believed in giving opportunity. You could argue, a lot of coaches like to say they follow Tikkun Olam. I'm saying that correctly?
Yeah, you got it.
But I really believe that he practiced that of trying to help others. Lived in the same row house in North Philadelphia. Never, I'm sure he made good money, but he was never someone who, absolutely just, was swimming in it like a lot of these coaches are now, and never forgot his roots. And so, what we've lost with John Thompson and John Chaney are two iconic figures who never hesitated to speak out, and were tremendous leaders, not just for the Black community, but I think for, everyone in sports. And, I would hope that we're entering a new era. I think for all, times that people, sometimes criticize LeBron James, I think he's done a marvelous job of speaking out, backing it up with like his school in Akron, and really looking out for those that have now come behind him. So it's not just words, it's actions. And, and that has to be celebrated and admired. Because we went through this lull in the 80s and 90s and really early 2000s where athletes were afraid to speak out. And now, since George Floyd, especially college athletes, are empowered to do so. No college coach right now is going to silence his player. No way. You would absolutely get crushed in that PR battle. If your player wants to speak out, they're speaking out.
No, and to see the names on the jerseys, not just name, but justice, equality.
Yes. And look, various entities try to hijack other narratives. For example, Colin Kaepernick was never protesting against the military. For whatever reason, the anthem at sporting events has been hijacked by the military. Okay. Whether it was whoever did it, that's what's happened. It's not about the military. It never has been. And yet no one has said anything negative about the military, yet that's what was taken from that. And then that narrative, was just sort of just ran away with it. To be honest, I don't know why we do the anthem at sporting events. Yes, it's become polarized. Some schools don't even come out. Some teams don't come out.
Right.
We don't play the anthem before a service. We don't play the anthem before you walk into work. You don't play the anthem before you go to the movies. For whatever reason, it's just at sporting events. And it's become this political issue when it really shouldn't even be there in the first place.
Well, going back to politics for a second, somebody on Facebook said, is Biden going to do the NCAA bracket now that you had Obama? You going in there or doing it on Zoom?
I would like to. My gut is probably not this year because of the pandemic. We got lucky, actually, in all 8 years. It was under the conditions that nothing crazy is going on in the world or in the country.
Of course.
And there was one time, one of the years where we had the tsunami in Indonesia, killed maybe 100,000 people. It was, horrific. And we ended up doing a telethon kind of thing that we put up there, but we were always sort of at the mercy of global events. And we got kind of lucky, to be honest. Would we have done one with Obama this year? I don't know, because of the pandemic. So we'll see. I think there's hope. He has an interest. I've actually seen him at games.
Yep.
He was
Okay.
at one of the Final Fours I was at, actually sitting a couple rows behind me. He's a big Syracuse fan.
Yep, absolutely.
There. He'd been to Syracuse Georgetown games in DC.
Yeah.
Senator, and I think is the vice president. So there's definitely an interest. It works because there's an interest. Obviously, Obama had it.
For sure.
I always said, like, if you want to do a baseball bracket with Bush, great.
Nice. I think it gives some humanity to these presidents as well. They're talking about politics, but
we asked because of politics. They wanted me to ask when I was still at ESPN with Trump, but he said no, and I'm kind of glad he did, not for political reasons, because it wouldn't have worked. He wasn't into it, not into the sport, and I would have said the same thing had Hillary won. Now, Bill Clinton, big basketball fan, I've actually sat in his tournament. Went to I know he was at the Final Four when Arkansas was there in '94.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it would have worked with Hillary.
Right. Want to go actually the Jewish route. One thing, actually, the next 3 weeks I have the law firm of Katz, Greenberg, and Schulman on the show. But
all friends of mine.
Yeah, no, they're wonderful. And what I love about this program, like I said, we're not talking sports. We're talking about the stories behind these sports, how to ask these questions. You mentioned actually in an interview with the Forward, the Jewish newspaper, that you were going to take your daughter to Israel for her bat mitzvah. Did that happen?
Did I say my daughter? Because we took my son.
Oh, your son. Sorry, one of your. It was a couple years ago. For one of your children.
Yes.
So did that have an impact on you? Basketball has become big in Israel with Maccabi, now with the Wizards. I just read yesterday the Wizards started a Hebrew Instagram page to get the NBA popular in Israel. Was there an impact in there that trip had that you could tell us about?
Well, I mean, it certainly had an impact on me personally. I loved it, and I knew I would. But we had an unbelievable trip. So we were there the summer of 18, and we went sort of a foodie trip. Unbelievable food. Went to some non-traditional places. Actually, we went on a Jeep tour on the Syrian border. That was pretty crazy. And with someone who was formerly in the Mossad.
That wasn't John Chaney, was it?
No. To eating in the Arab section of Jerusalem, best pitas I've ever had in my life, and hummus. It was an unbelievable trip. We'd go back in a second. Basketball is huge there. I hope the NBA can continue to penetrate because there's no question that there's an opportunity for more players, I think, to come through this pipeline, and it'd be great, if there was a little bit more through college. And I mean, obviously, UConn had a little bit of a pipeline.
Yeah, I'm getting their own Sheffers on the way here. Exactly.
Yeah. So it'd be great if it could continue. Obviously, basketball with Maccabi Tel Aviv and and their ability to be major factors in the Euro League. It has always been a big factor. It's funny, through the Euro League, it's a plus. When it comes to the Olympics, it's a negative because, and the World Cup, you could argue, because they get grouped with Europe because in the past, they couldn't actually play in their region. If they played in their region, I think there'd be a great chance that Israel would be represented, potentially in the Olympics in basketball or in the World Cup in soccer. But playing in Europe, you have no chance. But
it's actually interesting because the baseball, they're ready for Tokyo 2021. Actually, we hosted the Olympic team here last year with a couple other players who also fascinating in terms of the Judaism, the Israel roots as well. Actually, we were supposed to go to Israel this summer as a synagogue trip, and we were going to look at Israel through the angle of sports. We were going to go different partnerships that are happening, special needs, Arab-Israeli, that obviously got canceled. But next year, if you guys want to hop along, that would be you can be our guest. One last question, because I know obviously you have a busy college basketball day as well. Last week I talked to Chelsea Hopkins. She played for Duke and San Diego State, now Benot Ashdod, Israeli MVP. She mentioned in college basketball this idea of faith and athletes in action. I never heard of that before last week. And all these players studying Bible together, scriptures. I'm not hearing that come through, obviously, in any telecast. It sort of seems like this sort of secret that faith is getting these college athletes through some both difficult and really exciting times. Do you see any moments in college basketball where you see moments of faith?
Yes. And, look, it's interesting. I mean, Baylor, number 2 team in the country, potential title team. I've interviewed Jared Butler, who is very out with his faith. And you will hear that at times in post-game interviews. And look, to each his own or her own, as long as you don't completely hijack the interview with that, that's fine. We see that all the time, in a post-game interview. I think the fine line comes with the coaches. And I think it also depends at what institution you're at. And I would say this regardless. So, for example, if you are at a Jesuit, institution, Catholic institution, a lot of times, like Villanova, has a priest on the bench.
At the end of the bench. I know. I'm waiting for my call for yeshiva.
Right. So, look, that going in. All right. If you're a player, you are playing at that school. So you can't complain about that if you are not of that faith. The problem you run into, and I've seen this, is if you are at a state institution, okay, and you bring in someone of faith, regardless of the faith. And if you do that, then you need to make sure that that is optional, not mandatory. Look, I have no problem if you want to bring faith into that locker room, but you better be certain that everyone is okay with it. Because I have been in locker rooms where there have been ministers, priests, have not seen a rabbi, but, and if that's the case, that's fine. But I said, make sure that it is, someone who either A, is non-denominational and can speak in general terms of giving a blessing, which of course is more than fine. A benediction, if you will, universally. But, I think you really have to watch that line if it is strictly Christian based, if you're at a state institution, or, you may have players on your team who are Muslim, who, maybe Hindu, Buddhist, regardless. And so I really think, and also it's that fight, because you don't want to be, as a coach, interviewing, what do you believe? But you really need to take the temperature of your group, in that sense. But I do think you have that right, maybe is the wrong word, but if you are at an institution that is faith-based, Liberty, and all the Catholic schools, then, look, if you're a player and you go there, that's the deal. So that's going in.
Right. And on a couple of weeks, I have Tamir Goodman, Jewish Jordan, who obviously is going to go to Maryland, Towson State, and we've connected over the years and brought up those issues as well. We want to thank Andy Katz. A big shout out to Rabbi Andy Feig of Sinai Akiba Academy for connecting me to Andy Katz. A shout out to Sinai Temple, really to you for allowing us to ask those questions that we don't hear on TV. So again, these stories of intersection of sports and faith. Andy, we look forward, if you're out here for the Pac-12, for a visit here to Sinai Temple. We'll make sure that all those on the Bima will be speaking correctly and doing their research, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody then. This has been Rabbi on the Sidelines. Again, a thank you to Andy Katz, and have a wonderful week.